Hey everyone, in this video, I'm going to talk about some key takeaways from Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon, coming up right after this. Hey everyone, I'm Yoel. Welcome back to my channel. So grateful to have you. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about Martin Scorsese's latest film, Killers of the Flower Moon, and some key takeaways from the film. Now, this is not meant to be a movie review, as it were. It's more what we can learn from the film. As you know, this is if you've seen the film anyways, this is an extremely long film. So there's definitely plenty of material to take away from it in terms of various life lessons that I found after watching this film. I went to see this with my daughter last week, and we knew going in that it's a long film in typical Scorsese fashion. We both enjoyed it very much. I think my daughter a little less so than me. She's 17 years old as of the recording of this video. And, in today's kind of attention deficit disorder generation that we find ourselves in, it's a little difficult for some, particularly those of the younger audience, to sit through longer films. But she did it, and I think she enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it. Obviously, the acting was fantastic. We have Leonardo Dicaprio, of course, and Robert Deniro, some Scorsese favorites, probably the most go-to actors that Scorsese works with, I think. And I don't want to say newcomer. I think Lily Gladstone's been on the acting scene for a while, but this was certainly, one can say, a breakout role for Lily. And all in all, the performances were fantastic. And without that, I don't think anybody would have been able to watch the movie for as long as it is, particularly in the cinema where we watched it. But again, this is not a movie review. So this video assumes that you've seen it, or maybe you haven't seen it, you're thinking of seeing it, you're about to see it, and you're curious to learn a little bit more about the film. So in terms of the actual substance of the film, you may want to watch a movie review. There's plenty of great movie review channels out there, but this is more about some of the takeaways that we can learn from the film. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to jump into those takeaways that I jotted down over here. Now, the first one is about the concept of money and greed. Now, money in and of itself is not a bad thing. In fact, it's a fantastic thing. It's a great thing to be ambitious for money. Money is kind of the mechanism, the driving force for what allows us to live that abundant lifestyle that we want to live, and we want to be paid handsomely for the services that we provide. So money for it, in and of itself is not a bad thing. But something that really struck me from this movie was just kind of the general greed for money, to the extent where it excluded everything else. And maybe I should say, somewhat of a spoiler alert, there are a lot of people, so before you continue watching the video, just bear in mind, I will talk a bit about the film as well, which may give away certain parts. I know for myself, I'm not into the spoilers, so you may not want to watch this further if you haven't seen the film. But for those who have, or for those who don't care, a lot of people are dying in this film as a result of the greed for money. And now there's a very famous quote in, I don't know how to pronounce it in English, Ecclesiastis or something like that, the famous text of the ancient King Solomon, where he writes in that text, I think I mispronounced that, but he writes in that text, and I even looked it up before this video to make sure I pronounce it right, but you'll forgive me. I'll try and put the word in the description below. But in any event, in King Solomon's text, he says something there. He says in Hebrew, it says, Ohev kesef lo yispa kesef. And in English, that's translated as, those who love money will not be satiated or satisfied with money. And I think that's very true in this film. You see Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Ernest, I'm forgetting his name, Ebhart, or whatever the character's name is in the film. He comes to live with his uncle, and you can see there they live in a sprawling ranch. They've got servants and all sorts of livestock, and living a very opulent life. But right away from the get-go of the film, we're watching a discussion between De Niro's character playing the uncle and DiCaprio's character. Instantly, he's talking about all the money that the Osage has to offer, and that they're sitting on, and all their inheritance money and this and that, and how we have to take measures to get at that money, to the point where DiCaprio's character is prodded as De Niro's character pushes DiCaprio's character to marry into the wealthy Osage family, so that he would become next in line as an heir to the finances. And then the film continues where it's never enough. Every single heir, anybody that has any sort of rights in the wealth is, again, spoiler alert, one by one, that person is knocked off and dies under quote unquote mysterious circumstances. So something that was very important to me as a takeaway is that, again, money in and of itself is a wonderful tool, but if it gets distorted to the point where it becomes more important than all, including human life, to take an extreme example, which is what this film portrays, money can really cause a lot of damage in people's lives. And we see here by the end of the film where not only is Dicaprio's character, who was kind of duped, I wouldn't say duped, because he had free will and he made choices, which I'll get into in some other takeaways, but somebody who thought that by taking the measures that he would provide for more financial opulence for everybody, ended up working against him when it turned out that the money was really used to the exclusion of all morality and ethics. And that goes as well for the uncle's character, played by Robert De Niro. He doesn't end up in a good situation towards the end of the film as well. Okay, so something, to bear in mind is to always remember that, don't walk away from the movie thinking that money is the root of all evil. Okay, that's something that is a very anti-abundant way to look at things. Money is not the root of all evil unless, as King Solomon called it, unless it becomes the main and sole focal point, money for the sake of money. In that case, it can be a root of all evil. Okay, so that's the number one takeaway that I jotted down here. Something else in a bit of a different context, I've actually talked about this in other videos, is the idea of the mastermind. Now you see here that in the film, those sage elders, they get together. I don't know how often, if it's once a week or once a month, whatever the case is, you see that there's a group meeting. And the idea of mastermind is the concept of getting together a bunch of like-minded people in the room. It could be in a business context where you've got people in a certain industry are getting together to share ideas, to brainstorm, to help each other grow. That's in the business context. That could also be in personal development. You've got all sorts of groups around the world where people are meeting to share their experiences and their ideas for growth in the personal development space. You have that in the concept of Alcoholics Anonymous, for example, where I don't know if you would call that a mastermind, but people, like-minded people, are getting together to give each other strength and to give each other encouragement and whatnot. And we see that in the film as well, where the elders get together to brainstorm ideas. And in this particular context, they're getting together to discuss what to do about these mysterious deaths that are happening. Now, unfortunately, they prove to be pretty naive, which is somewhat of a takeaway as well. I don't know if I would list that out separately about the idea of being receptive to what's actually happening around you and not being too naive. But the point here is that they are taking steps to get together and discuss, what's happening around them so that they can come up with creative solutions. And they come up with a solution to appoint somebody to go and investigate, to go to Washington to speak to the politicians about what's happening, to get somebody to start, coming to their town to investigate. But the point is that this idea of mastermind, which is talked a lot about, about by a lot of the great authors, Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich, he talked about the idea of mastermind, and many other authors since then. You see that here playing out in the film, the concept of getting together and not kind of just being, a lone wolf and being on your own and not sharing ideas and generating discussion. Okay, so it's very important. The concept of getting together to generate discussion can be a very powerful thing. It's also, by the way, in prayer. So for those of you who are religious, there is the idea of those communal prayers. So it could be in a church, for example, if you're going to a church to pray together with other like-minded individuals. Could be a synagogue, could be a mosque, whatever your particular religious affiliation will be. But the idea of togetherness, of everybody coming together to discuss things, is something that is very thematic in this film, which we see with the elders getting together. Now, the third point I mentioned, I kind of alluded to this, is the idea of going to Washington. And what I took away from that is the idea of taking action. Okay, so a lot of times we kind of, we witness what's going on around us. We feel that something's off, but we kind of get paralyzed with, it could be with fear, with, it could be laziness. There could be a whole lot of reasons why we don't take action. We don't know what to do. In this case, the elders decided that they're going to take action. They're going to do something about it. They can't just stand by and let things happen and let people around them die without them taking action. Okay, getting together as part of the mastermind is part of the taking action, but so is actually going to send somebody to Washington to take action. And spoiler again, the person they end up selling ends up at the bottom of the river, I think it was. So that didn't really pan out for that representative. But afterwards, Lily Gladstone's character does end up going to Washington herself to speak to. She ends up actually speaking to the president of the United States. So it goes to show you, when you have that resolve and you decide to take action, there is a lot that you can accomplish. And what came out as a result of that visit to Washington is that the president in the film obviously did end up sending somebody from the FBI to also a fantastic actor. He was actually in Game Night. I don't remember his name, but anyway, he plays the FBI investigator, comes to the town, and that sets the chain of events where they do start to discover who's responsible for these murders. Okay, so the idea of not just kind of sitting passively and doing nothing, deciding to take action and actually taking that action is very crucial in all facets of our lives. Okay, because there's a lot of times, I know for myself, you could be the type who procrastinates. Again, it could be laziness, it could be fear, but all it takes is taking action. Even doing this video, a lot of times for me, I'm not in the mood to do a video. I've got good ideas, but I don't really do anything about it. I get distracted. I can find all sorts of reasons or excuses not to do it. But once I sit down and start taking action, that starts a chain of events where you do one video and another video and another video. Before you know it, you've got a whole library of videos. This is still early on in my channel. So if you're watching this early on, you won't see tons of videos. But let's say hopefully by the time you're watching this, maybe I will have had 100 videos up already. So that's all a part of the idea of the importance of taking action. Now, another takeaway I got from this is the idea of trusting your instincts. Okay, now we see DiCaprio's character when his uncle first approaches him, and you see DiCaprio's kind of, he's understanding what his uncle's getting at in terms of his thirst for getting at the money of the Osage and what he wants DiCaprio to do, which is to marry a woman who has, a large financial inheritance or inheritance is coming to her. You see DiCaprio's kind of struggling with the idea, like, you want me to marry somebody just for her money? And he doesn't say it straight out, but DiCaprio is such a wonderful actor that even without verbalizing it, you can see in the way he portrays the character's, ethical dilemmas that he's going through as he's talking to De Niro's character. He doesn't know what to do. Okay, ultimately he opts for the decision that doesn't go with his instincts. Unfortunately, he decides to marry her, and then as that happens, that just leads him down a very negative path. So he decides to marry her. Then the next thing he knows, his uncle is approaching him about knocking off various members of her family, ultimately convincing him to knock off his own wife. And you see DiCaprio's character is just, the struggle and the pain of dealing with these moral dilemmas that he's going through keep getting worse and worse and worse, and he keeps giving in and giving in and giving in. And all that started because he didn't trust that instinct. And I know, in my own life, there's been times where you can call something a red flag, where something is not going to work out. It's not a good idea to pursue. And there's been times where I have, for whatever reason, disregarded that, and it has not worked out for me. On the flip side, where I do trust my instincts, I am able to make much better decisions. So we all have that sort of internal barometer, if you will, that tells us, hey, wait a second, there's like a warning over here. Maybe I shouldn't pursue this path. It may seem in the short run, it may seem that it can really work out. In DiCaprio's character's case, it may seem in the short run that, hey, all I have to do is marry this woman, and hey, look, I love her anyway. I'm attracted to her anyways. What can be bad? It's a win-win. So I'll get to the finances, but it doesn't come out of a place of purity. It comes out of a place of greed. And by not listening to his instincts, that really got the ball rolling in the wrong path. And just like when I said in the previous takeaway, when you take action in a positive way, and that builds one right after the other, and positive builds on positive and builds on positive, it also works in the reverse, kind of the yin and the yang, the polarities of life, or of the universe, if you will. It also works on the negative side. One negative action could lead to another negative and another negative, and before you know it, you're in too deep, like DiCaprio's character. Okay, so the idea of listening to your instincts is obviously very, very important in life, and a takeaway from this film. And finally, something that I wanted to bring out, which was interesting to me too, and really a tribute to the depth of DiCaprio's performance, is that human beings are complex, okay? Because you see DiCaprio, while he definitely married her based on his uncle's prodding, not for the right reasons, you see, though, that there is a love there. There is a love that he has for this woman, and that's what's causing him all these sort of moral dilemmas that he's finding himself in, because there is sort of that idea that he does care for this woman and he does love her and he has children with her, and you see his love for his children, which comes out a lot in the end of the film as well. But at the same time, he's kind of screwing her over, if you will, because he's also very much complicit, if not one of the main actors in the, or, you know, actors, not in the sense of the actor in film, but the actor is somebody who's taking action in a negative way. He's actively getting at her money's coming to her and eliminating those around her and her family that would otherwise have rights and access to that money. All the while you see that he does really care for her, although a lot of times that care, and throughout the movie it kind of dissipates with time, probably because he can't live with that moral guilt that he's facing. On the one hand, trying to be faithful to her as a husband and a loving husband, but on the other hand, he's also trying to screw her out of her inheritance at the same time. So the point I'm trying to make is that human beings can have two very separate and what would seem like irreconcilable emotions. On the one hand, you can have somebody who loves this woman, but on the other hand, you can have somebody who's at the same time trying to get at her money and stop at nothing to do that. And that's not justifying, again, because if you know, based on my previous takeaways, that's my very point, that it does not justify. He should not have done it, and it was morally reprehensible, you know, what DiCaprio's character is doing. But all the while, he's able to kind of juggle his feelings for her while he's doing it. And the point is that human beings can be complex. I know in my interactions with people, a lot of times I've wondered, like, how could this person, on one hand, I've had people in my life who can say one thing to me and they seem friendly in a certain sense, and then on the other hand, they'll say something that's very hurtful or do something that I feel can be very hurtful. And the point isn't to be a victim towards that, but just understanding human nature. I remember having a discussion with somebody about this, and I would say, like, no, this is this is this person's main quality. They're selfish, or they're this. And this kind of a mentor of mine would say, like, well, I don't know, maybe that's not this person's personality. Maybe this person's personality is that they're a good person, but sometimes the selfish aspect to their character comes out. And that's a very tricky thing. It's not about judging somebody, is somebody right or somebody wrong. It's more about just understanding the complexity that is the human experience. And that's something that comes out portrayed masterfully by DiCaprio in his character. Okay, so just to summarize, these are 5 takeaways that I got from the film. Like I said, it's a long film, so there's a ton of takeaways that you may have come up with. Please leave that in the comments. I would love to see what you think about, you know, different things that you learned from the film. But to summarize the ones that I've come up with, number 1 is that money is not the root of all evil unless you make that the sole focal point to the exclusion of anything else. Number 2 is the idea of the mastermind and getting together to share ideas and, you know, generate you know, positivity and brainstorming in the idea of the collective, of the group collective, the mastermind. Number 3 is taking action. Okay, so if you see a wrongdoing, or if there is something that you want to get done, it's not going to happen on its own. You've got to take action, and that gets the ball rolling. Number 4 is the idea of trusting your instincts. Okay, don't disregard that. That's an internal warning sign, or internal, you know, that's an internal cue for you to follow. Don't ignore that. Trust your instincts. And number 5 is the idea that human beings are extremely complex. Nothing is really black and white. It's not as simple as we might think on the surface. So I hope you found that an interesting discussion on the film Killers of the Flower Moon. And thanks for joining. Looking forward to seeing you at the next video. Hey guys, this is your annoying reminder to please hit that subscribe button. You'll be helping me out, and you'll also get notified of the next cool video. And check out the other videos on my channel. There's some great stuff over there, all sorts of topics. Take care.